I was pushing and he was coming out fine, and then he just kind of stopped coming out, and then they couldn't find his heart rate. And so the doctor's like, you got to get him out quick, like push really hard. So I'm pushing as much as I can. And she's like, his heart rate's dropping. I'm going to have to cut a episiotomy. She literally had the scissors in her hand. And then one of the nurses comes over and she's like, oh, I think the monitor just moved. And so she moved the monitor and his heart rate was fine.
I'm Kayla Heater, follower of Jesus, wife and mother of 6 children, Christian childbirth educator and doula, and your host of the Surrendered Birth Stories podcast, where we share God-centered birth stories, evidence-based birth education, and our pursuit of surrendering our birth plans to God. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, this is Kayla's husband, Chris. Kayla just got home from a super long marathon birth and she's absolutely wiped. So she asked me to cover the intro this week. I'm sure you'll hear about that birth story in the weeks to come. I don't know why I feel the need to mention that our family is pretty excited right now because a Raising Cane's Chicken Fingers just opened up a location right by our house. It's been very dangerous, and every time we pass it, we try to resist the temptation to stop in, and we may or may not have gone there already, twice this week. There's just something about the cane sauce. Also, our older kids were able to attend some various summer camps over the past few weeks. Our oldest boy attended a baseball camp and landed the Silver Slugger Award along with Best All Around, and we're really proud of him for that. Also, our daughter attended a camp called Canva Creators where she was able to do a deep dive on the Canva platform and produce about 10 projects over the course of a week. And based on her work, I'm pretty sure that she's even surpassed my ability on Canva as a 12-year-old. Well, let's go ahead and get started with this week's episode. Kelli was anticipating a beautiful, unmedicated hospital birth for her first, but an unassumed diagnosis of cholestasis would have her being induced on Pitocin and change all of her plans. Next time, she was anticipating the same outcome, but thankfully she had the birth she planned the first time, but realized that she no longer wanted to fight the battle of trying to have a natural birth in a hospital and being questioned about every decision she was making. So when she got pregnant with twins, she and her husband landed on having a home birth. This didn't mean, however, that her anxiety around the delivery vanished, as God would have to teach her that surrendering her plans and leaving Him in control was the only way that would happen, regardless of where or how she gave birth.
Well, welcome to another episode of Surrendered Birth Stories. I am your host, Kayla Heater, and I have Kelli with me today. Kelli, I would love for you to just take a minute and introduce yourself and let us get to know you a little bit before we dive into your stories.
Sure. My name is Kelli Ford. I'm married to Alex. We've been married for 8 years, and I have 4 beautiful children. And my last set of children were twins, and we had them at home.
And I'm so excited to hear all about that story. Actually, I'll mention this. You left a review for the show, and I didn't know it was you at the time, but you left a review for the show, and I got to read it, and it was so exciting to read and so inspiring to read. And then on the podcast, I said, can you please reach out? I would love to hear your birth story if you'd be willing to share it. And then here we are.
And I did.
And you did. I'm so happy.
I still listen.
I'm so glad. I'm so excited to hear this story. I actually just got to go to my first vaginal twin birth as a doula that went as planned, I'll just say, a couple weeks ago. And it was amazing. And I am all like, wow, I want to just take all the twin babies now because that was so cool. But we will start with your first birth story to give us sort of a good background too about like your history with birth and everything. So let's start there. So take us back to your first story.
So my first birth, I have a 5-year-old now. I was working as a paramedic in Houston. My plans were for a natural birth, and I was doing all the things to have a natural birth, taking the natural birth classes. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm just not going to get an epidural. Like everything's going to go fine. I'm going to decline all the interventions. And I had no complications. I'm young and healthy. And then at my probably about 38 weeks, my hands had started itching really bad. And I didn't know what that was. I thought when I get hot, my feet and hands just kind of itch a little bit. And I was like, man, I'm just so hot all the time. And my hands and feet are just itching even worse. And then I was like, maybe it's athlete's foot or something. Like, I don't know. Like, this is really bad. And then at my 39-week appointment, I told my doctor, and she's like, oh, honey, you're going to get induced today. And I was like, no, I don't want to be induced. And she's like, well, this is called cholestasis. And the complication of cholestasis is stillbirth. And it's not something we can predict or anticipate. It just happens. So you're getting induced today. And so I start crying and I'm like, I don't want to be induced. And she's like, why don't you want to be induced? And I'm like, because you're going to give me Pitocin and then you're going to give me an epidural and then I'm going to get a C-section. And that's just not what I want. And so she checked me in the office and I was already 3 centimeters. And she's like, you don't need any of the, I don't know what the other drugs are that they give you. She's like, we're just going to start you. We're just going to start you straight on Pit and that baby will be out before the end of the day. And I went into like a panic attack. I'm like, I don't want to do it. But she basically said, you have to like rush over there right now. She wouldn't even let me go home and get my bag, my hospital bag.
Did she tell you how high your numbers were?
Well, that's the thing about the bile acid test is it takes 4 to 5 days to get back for whatever reason. So she said we would draw the labs, but we're not going to have something definitive today. And with the risk being so high, they don't really see that as a risk to take by just waiting for the blood work. So usually when you have cholestasis, you get it in second trimester. And so they'll do weekly levels, bile acid levels, and then they can trend it. And then depending on where they are, they'll just schedule you at 36 weeks. In some of the European countries, they look at your bile acid levels and they'll schedule you sometime after 36 weeks based on how high your levels are. They don't do that here because I think it's more about liability. And so just if you have it, 36 weeks, you're having your baby. So at least I was 39 before it was bad enough for me to mention. So I walked next door to get induced. And I'm already in my head, I'm like, I've lost. Like, I'm getting induced. I don't have a choice. Like, the battle is over. So my mental state going into it was poor, which probably was why it didn't go as planned. So they started me on Pit at 9. And then I wasn't informed enough to like pay attention to like what the Pit was, how often they were coming in. But it seemed like very often they were coming in and turning it up and turning it up and turning it up. And then around noon, they came in and broke my water and everything was like tolerable. When they had hooked me up to the monitor when I got there, I was actually already contracting about every 5 minutes, but I couldn't feel them. So I'm curious if we wouldn't have been induced, if it would have happened very soon anyways.
Yeah.
And then once they broke my water, then it just like went terribly. Like the contractions got really intense. They stacked right on top of each other. And then like you just feel sick. Like honestly, you just feel terrible. I hadn't eaten breakfast. So I'm like, let me try and eat a banana and threw it up. And so I toughed it out for 3 hours is all I got. And then at 3 o'clock, they checked me and I was at a 4. And I was like, I've been doing this for 6 hours and I've made it 1 centimeter. Like in my head, I'm like, well, I can't do this for another 24 hours. So let's just get the epidural now.
Yeah.
So I got the epidural and then I just felt like a failure as you do, which in hindsight, it was the right thing because I wasn't coping with contractions well. And every contraction, I'm like super tense and couldn't relax. And which I will say now that I've had 3 children without an epidural, those 4 centimeter contractions with Pitocin were worse than anything else that I've experienced. So if you get induced, keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Anyway, so at 3 o'clock, I got the epidural and then I took a nap and they rolled me. I took another nap and then she came back at 5 and checked me. And she was like, oh my gosh, get the doctor. Like he's coming out. And I have felt nothing. Like, she's like, you don't feel pressure or anything. And I guess they just did a really good epidural because I felt absolutely nothing.
Oh man.
And so I pushed for 20 minutes and he was out. So all in all, it wasn't a horrible induction. Like I've heard the stories that go on for days.
Yeah.
And he was born healthy. He was 7-14, I believe. I tore a little bit. But one thing that happened that was funny, and I was really glad that I prepared my husband, is I was pushing and he was coming out fine. And then he just kind of stopped coming out. And then they couldn't find his heart rate. And so the doctor's like, you got to get him out quick, like push really hard. So I'm pushing as much as I can. And she's like, his heart rate's dropping. I'm going to have to cut a episiotomy. And I was like, you're just sitting there and you're just like, you sat with him in the prenatal office. And she's like, I never cut them unless it's like life or death. So if I'm asking you to cut it, like it's serious. Like I don't do them often. And so when she's saying that, I'm like, okay, like you're the expert. And my husband, who is a nurse, by the way, and a paramedic, and he's like, can we just wait a little bit longer? And she literally had the scissors in her hands and he's putting his hand, he's like very close. He's like, just wait, just hold on just a second. And then one of the nurses comes over and she's like, oh, I think the monitor just moved. And so she moved the monitor and his heart rate was fine. And so it was like, oh, I was that close to getting a episiotomy for nothing, literally
for no
nothing.
reason. Yeah. Whether you are pregnant with your first baby or wanting to have a different birth experience for a subsequent delivery, this is the fully comprehensive Christian childbirth course for you, the Surrendered Birth Course. With over 10 years of experience as a childbirth educator, a birth doula, and having had 5 kids myself, almost 6, I have created a course fit for every mama out there who wishes to be fully informed on all things pregnancy, labor, birth, postpartum, and breastfeeding, while remembering to keep Jesus at the center of it all. Our God created a beautiful design for birth, something to look forward to, and not something to be feared. Not only will this course get you prepared for your birth, but it will also get you excited for it. It will answer questions you never knew you had and teach you things you didn't realize were so incredibly valuable and central to the entire birthing process. I've had numerous couples on their 2nd, 3rd, or even 4th babies who've taken this course and said how incredibly glad they were and that they learned so much more than they ever thought they would. With over 12 hours of video content, 5 modules, numerous lessons, detailed PDF printout notes, and endless resources, we dive deep into pregnancy, labor, the risks and benefits of interventions, inductions, immediate and extended postpartum for both mom and baby, everything you need to know about breastfeeding, and basic newborn care. This course covers everything. Once you've taken the course, I am available to you for any questions you might have during a monthly live Q&A Zoom call exclusive to our online course audience, as well as through email. The course is on demand, so as soon as you purchase it, you'll be able to start right away and re-watch any lessons as many times as you need. Whether you are planning a medicated hospital birth or an unmedicated birth at a birth center or home birth, this course will prepare you in every way that you can be prepared. While I understand the desire to take a specific hospital or home birth course catered to your specific birth plans, birth doesn't always go how we plan. And having the knowledge of how birth can go in other environments outside of our plans is essential. Most importantly, I will help you to surrender these plans to God. And in return, the Holy Spirit will provide you with the peace that only He can give. For more information on the course, to read testimonials of others who have taken it, or to sign up for the course, just click the link in the show notes. And lastly, remember, just like we say here every week on the podcast, learn all that you can, make the best plans, and then leave it in God's hands.
I was that close to getting a episiotomy for nothing, literally nothing.
For no reason. Yeah.
Anyway, so we avoided that.
Well, praise the Lord for your husband, because
I
that is
know.
not a fun recovery.
I've heard the one first degree tear that I got was not great, but it wasn't as bad as an episiotomy, I would think.
Yeah.
So that postpartum was normal. I never got postpartum depression. We ended up moving when he was 2 months old. So like that was the big stressor, not necessarily having a newborn. I went from working full time to not working. So to me, like this is what I wanted. Like I wanted to stay home with my babies and it was heaven.
Yeah.
Nursing was a bit of a challenge, but I have a lot of anxiety about supply. And so that was pretty much the worst of it. Like his latch was fine. Once you get over the first couple weeks of learning how to latch, our nursing journey was fairly easy. When he was 1, we started to try for baby number 2, and it took us almost a year to get pregnant with him. So we're like, it's probably going to take a while, but month 2, we got pregnant again. So I was like, oh, they're going to be closer together than I anticipated.
Oh, so
And
it took you almost a year to get pregnant with your first.
with my first, and
And
so
so
with the
you
second,
started trying when he was a year, thinking it would take a long
Mhm.
time, and it didn't. Okay, gotcha.
Correct. Anyway, so they were going to be less than 2 years apart. So that was made me a little nervous. I thought I would at least get the first one potty trained first. Well, I did not.
No.
Surprise. One thing with cholestasis is if you've got it once, you're most likely going to get it again. There's like the numbers range, but they say about 70% of people get it with all their pregnancies. So I really wanted to go the midwife route, but we moved to Oklahoma City and they don't have midwives in hospitals here. And if you get cholestasis, you risk out of being under a midwife. So we talked about doing a midwife, and then if we got transferred out, we would have to like pay the midwife and now a hospital bill.
Yeah.
And so financially, we decided not to risk it. So we found an OB here. I guess I never really figured out how to find a good OB because they're kind of all the same. Like I've asked around and there's people's favorites, but you can't find the doctors that are more natural minded because I've been to several and they've all told me that they're natural minded and I can do what I want. And then when push comes to shove, they just aren't.
Yeah.
And so I kind of knew going into the hospital that I was just going to have to be a strong advocate for myself. And I needed my husband to help with that because in labor, you can't be an advocate for yourself very well. So when we were pregnant, I had like this big binder and I had all of like these forms and flow charts and spreadsheets and stuff for him to take to the hospital. So when they're like, we need to do this, could flip the tab. And in my head, I was like, that's preparing him for being in what I called the war zone. Like that's what it felt like going into the hospital would be a war zone. And it was just like preparing for battle. And he was my captain. So that pregnancy, I kept expecting to get cholestasis. And I did try to be more health conscious than I was with my first and try more liver healthy diets. And surprisingly, I did not get cholestasis. So I was able to go into labor naturally. And I was, I think, 1 day shy of 40 weeks. And I had prodromal labor several times leading up to that. And like the prodromal labor, that's like 8 minutes apart, like you're working to breathe and you're like, this is it. And then you would do that for hours and then they would just stop. That happens 2 or 3 times. So when 39 and 6 comes around and it's happening again, and I'm just in denial. And honestly, throughout the day, they were not regular contractions at all. They're very inconsistent. I think I had one the whole day that was painful. And so I'm telling my husband, like, what's happening? And he's like, oh, I think you're in labor today. And I'm like, no, I think it's going to fizzle out again. And then around 5 or 6 o'clock, it was like, it switched. It's like, all right, now they're every 5 minutes. They're lasting, a minute long. And so I was home. I wanted to stay home for a while before he went in. And he started filling up our bathtub because I was like, let's get in the water. Like, that's supposed to help. And by the time the bathtub was filled, he was like, I think we need to go to the hospital. Like, these are really close together. And like, I've only been in labor for like an hour. Like, we don't need to go to the hospital. And then I started feeling like a lot of pressure. And I was like, oh, I think that means we need to go to the hospital. And so when we got in the car, I started throwing up, which I've learned is like my signal that the end is like,
The end
I
is
guess you hit like that transition
transition.
point.
Yeah.
And so we get to the hospital, and when we get there, like this just like fear just washes over me of how much I don't want to be there. And so they checked me in triage, and I was a 7. And I'm like, okay, like maybe it won't be too long. And then my labor stalled out, and contractions didn't stop completely, but the intensity slowed down a lot. And they spaced out to like almost 10 minutes. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're going to send me home. Like I thought we were going to have them in the car, and now the contractions are gone. I was like, oh no, are they going to start Pitocin? Like, I don't know. And the Lord sent me a wonderful nurse that had 4 natural births of her own in her hospital. And she knew, she's just like, she never asked for an epidural once. She just completely let me do my thing. She was in the room a lot doing paperwork and stuff, but she gave us as much privacy as she could. And so we got to the hospital, I guess around 8, and things didn't like pick up again till probably close to midnight.
Which is all hormonal. It was all like you left your safe place, and your hormones noticed and the tense rose and the oxytocin lowered, and then
it was like we crossed the threshold of the labor and delivery floor, and it just like shifted.
Yep. And I've seen that before in like doula clients for sure. Like when they change environments, we think we're about to have a car baby, and then suddenly like it stops because they shifted places. And I see why you had home birth for your 3rd.
I can vouch for that. It definitely happened.
Yeah.
But it was a big bummer, because I think I would have had a super quick labor if I wouldn't have gone to the hospital.
If you jumped in that bathtub.
If I'd have stayed in it. I did get in the bathtub, and I was in there for probably about 5 minutes before, I don't even think it was full, before my husband's like, we've got to go. The app says we have to go. I was like, oh. So it started picking up close to midnight, and then it got pretty intense again. So this time, counter pressure really helped, which I don't even remember if we did that with my first, but my husband would squeeze my hips. And I don't know if we started the hip squeeze too early or if it was just long enough, but he had been squeezing my hips for several hours, and like his arms were, they were barely holding on.
Yeah.
And so the last probably 30 minutes, he would squeeze, but he was not squeezing very hard. And I was yelling at him, I was like, squeeze harder. And he's like, it can't. And I'm like, I don't care.
You have to.
So he ended up, I'm like, this is not a choice. So he ended up like, I was on my side on the bed, and he would just kind of like sit on top of my hips with his like body weight behind him. And that helped a bit. And then I guess there's just a point when they're in your pelvis where it does, like the hip squeeze doesn't help anymore, and you just don't need it. And so at one point he just stopped, and I guess I didn't notice, or I don't know, but I started pushing. And so they get all the staff in there. And luckily the doctor that was on call was a doctor that was part of the clinic I was with. And I had actually seen her several times when my OB was out for a personal reason. So I saw her for 3 or 4 visits. So she was aware of my wishes, and she was really nice, which I think helped. But I remember being surprised at how many people were there, because with my first, like, I remember a couple nurses coming in, but I don't remember there just being this like wall of people just watching me push, and it made me super uncomfortable. And so I started out with the bed was all the way up, and I was kind of like kneeled over the bed, pushing. And then the doctor's like, why don't you get on your back? And my husband, I didn't even open my mouth. He's like, she doesn't want to get on her back. She wants to do it however she wants to do it. And the doctor told me that she's like, that's fine, but I can't protect your perineum if you're not on your back. And I remember physically rolling my eyes and just like, I don't care. And so I pushed on my knees for a little bit. And then the bed that I was in was really squishy, so it was kind of hard to hold my legs up. So I ended up shifting, and I was laying on my side. With him, I pushed for about 45 minutes, and he came out. And again, I was able to do it unmedicated, but just the environment was uncomfortable. And I felt like, an animal in a zoo. And I hated it like so much. And then the cherry on top of the cake was after he was born, the pediatric nurse came in and she's like, hey, we did the blood testing and he's Coombs positive. And in all my research, I had not managed to come across that one.
And
So
he's what
I'm
positive?
RH.
Oh, like RH positive.
Yeah. So he's RH positive. I was RH negative.
Yeah.
And they're like, so it's probably nothing, but we do have to run some blood tests and we have to draw the blood at 6 hours. And so I was like, very calm. I was like, okay. And will you do that here in the room with us? And she's like, no, we take them to the nursery for that. And I said, okay, will I be able to go to the nursery with him? And she says, no, we don't allow parents in the nursery. And so I just say, I take her pamphlet, I say, thank you very much. And she leaves. And then I look at my husband and I'm like, there is no way that they're doing that. Like over my dead body, are they going to take my baby without me to draw his blood? And so I start Googling, like, what is this? Like, I had never heard of it. And so like, I just had a baby. Like they just moved me to the postpartum room. And I'm like, again, in a panic of like, okay, what is this? Like, I know it was just a blood draw, but to me, like, I can barely allow them to do like the heel prick, which is much less invasive. And so I just did not want them to do that. And all the questions I asked, she's just like, here's a pamphlet, read the pamphlet. I don't know. Here's the pamphlet. So for the next 5 hours, I am just researching what this is. And in my research, I have found an article that was by the American Academy of Pediatrics, and it was published just a few months ago. And they said if you check the bilirubin levels just with the thing they put on their head, the sensor, and they're below a certain number at 12 and 24 hours, it's 97% accurate. So if you want to avoid blood draws, that's a reasonable way to do it. And so they came in at the 6 hour mark to take him, and the poor nurse, she must have been like the first week on the job because she was very much like she's doing everything exactly by the book.
Yeah.
And she's like, all right, we're here to take him for his blood work. And I'm like, I think we're going to decline that. And her jaw dropped open. She's like, oh.
What do I do with this?
And I was like, if you want to send the pediatrician in, who, by the way, it's like 4 or 5 a.m. So the on-call person is asleep.
Right.
And I'm like, if you want to send them in and if they can answer my questions, we'll consider it. But otherwise, we're going to decline that. And so she just looked at me. She's like, well, okay. And she left. And I figured if it's really that important of a test, they're going to go wake up the pediatrician and they're going to come in here.
Yeah.
And then maybe I can actually get my questions answered. And then lo and behold, nobody came to answer my questions. And so the next morning when the pediatrician came in to do her rounds, she was like, oh yeah, good call on the blood work. Turns out it was the kind of Coombs that doesn't matter. So we didn't need it. And I'm just like, what does that mean? Like, I don't know what that means. Like the kind of Coombs that doesn't matter. Maybe the test was wrong. I still to this day don't know what that means. I haven't researched it that well, but it's just like, they just blew it off like, oh yeah, we didn't need that. And it's like, you guys almost drew my baby's blood, which is traumatic for them, for me, and you to build me for it. And it was unnecessary.
And separated you guys. And
yeah,
I've come to not trust hospitals when they take a baby out of a room. So
yeah, I don't, outside of like CPR in progress, I don't think I would allow my child outside of my sight in any situation in a hospital.
Yeah.
Anyways, so that happened all night. Now I've not slept. So I've now been awake for like 48 hours. And then of course the morning comes and then they start coming in to do all the things that they do. And I'm just so tired. And the pediatrician comes in, she does her checks, everything's fine. And I'm like, I would really like to go home. I was like, is there any way that we can just go home? And she said that she would try on her end to get everything cleared up and all the paperwork done so that we could leave before the 24-hour mark. And so she made us call our pediatrician and they had to do all the 24-hour tests there. And I'm like, I don't care. I've got to get out of here. Like my anxiety is horrible. I'm stressed. I'm disturbed. It's hot. Like the air conditioning wasn't working very well or something. It's just like the room is so hot. And I was so close to just walking out the doors. I'm just like, I want to leave so bad. And unfortunately, the pediatrician ended up signing the paperwork for us to leave early, but my OB doesn't do her rounds until the morning. And she's apparently the only one that's allowed to sign me out. So I had to wait for her the next morning before I could leave.
Oh no.
And at
Mm-mm.
one point, my husband's like, he's like, we tried really hard. So let's just take it for what it is. We'll get through the next 12 hours and we'll be okay. And so we did, in fact, survive the next 12 hours, but it was unpleasant. And when we left the hospital, I was like, I am never, ever going back to a hospital. Like, I don't care what happens. I will have my baby alone at home before I go back to a hospital. Because if this isn't a situation where everything went fine, like I had him unmedicated, and even with my first, when I was induced, like it was an 8-hour induction. Like these are not horrible experiences, but like, what if something did go wrong? Like, what if I got that bad nurse or that evil doctor that you hear these horror stories about?
Mm-hmm.
And so I never talked about it that much with my husband until we got pregnant again. And so when our second was about a year again, I was like, hey, I want to start talking about baby number 3. And my husband was very against more children. He said, he's like, 2 is really busy. He was in school to get his RN or his bachelor's for his RN. And, there's a lot of things that go into deciding to have more kids. And so we prayed about it. And for about a year, he was not ready for that. And then a year later, he's like, all right, we can do one more kid. So we agreed. And again, really quickly, we got pregnant, which was a surprise still, which I guess that's just how it works now. I think what it was, on a side note, for people that can't get pregnant, not that this is advice, but the only thing that was different with the times I've been pregnant quickly, which I've had 3 early miscarriages that have all been on the first try. And the miscarriages, they're like 4 or 5 weeks. So we don't get very far. But every time I've gotten pregnant on the first or second try, except the first, my oldest son, and I was working in a stressful job. And as soon as that detail was out of the picture, pregnancy has been very easy versus like the first time I was getting pregnant. I thought I was going to be someone who was not able to get pregnant because it took so long. So random tangent, but so we get pregnant with our third, and this pregnancy is so much different. My nausea starts super, super early, and it's so bad. And I'm just so tired. And I have decided that the reason is because I must be pregnant with a girl. And I know that when you're pregnant with a girl, that things sometimes can feel different. And so I've just convinced myself that that's why. And we skipped the first ultrasound this time just because I didn't want extra ultrasounds. And I told my husband, I'm like, I don't want to go back to the OB. Like, I want a midwife. Like, I want to do it. I don't care if it's at a birthing center. I don't care if it's at home. I don't want to go in a hospital. So we looked around, and I had just started working out with a girl at church before I was pregnant. And when I got pregnant, she randomly started telling me that she had all her babies at home and who her midwife was. And her midwife, I had already scheduled a consult with, and didn't know that. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, what are the chances of all the midwives? Like, she's delivered all your babies. And so I thought that maybe like God's lining things up to actually give me a home birth. And so we meet a couple of midwives. We decided to go with her. We looked at some birthing center ones as well, but I really liked her. And she did home visits, which was really convenient because I had 2 older kids. And so we do the blood work. Everything's fine. We decide to do the genetic testing because the test that she uses, it can see if it's Rh positive or negative. So that way I can figure out if I want the RhoGAM shot or not. And so that was my only reason for doing it. But you do get to find out the gender. And I was like, yeah, I get to find out with an ultrasound. So the testing was supposed to take 2 weeks. And a week into it, I got an email that said the blood has been received and it's being processed. So I was like, man, it's not going to be for another 2 weeks. So the 2 weeks comes and goes, and I still haven't heard back from the testing. And one of the things she told me, she says, if it takes a long time, just so you know, like sometimes there's something wrong with the testing. Sometimes it's a positive result. Sometimes we just have to redo it. But if it takes a while to hear, just know that those are some of the things that could cause that. And she also said, if there's bad news, you won't get an email from them. You'll get a call from me. They'll call me first. And so I was supposed, like, the deadline to receive it was on a Thursday, and I didn't hear all Thursday. So I'm now panicking. I'm like, something's wrong with the genetic testing. And so Friday comes around and I get a call from my midwife, and I was like, oh my gosh, like she's got bad news. And so she calls and she's like, so everything on the genetic testing looks fine, but that I've never seen before is the gender. It says inconclusive. She says, I've never seen this before. It's because the fetal fraction was high. It had results for everything. So why that one thing was inconclusive, she didn't know. She's like, one of the things it could be is it could have been twins. It could still be twins, or it could be like an absorbing twin, which can still mess up the test. So we should probably schedule ultrasound to rule that out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what if it's twins? I was like, I have been really nauseous. But I convinced myself that it wasn't twins because when I was taking pregnancy tests, they were like super faint, which is normal for me. Like on the day I missed my period, it's like a very faint positive. And I had done the progression testing the whole time, and they were just as all my other ones. They were very faint, and then about 2 weeks later is like you get a strong one. So it's like everyone with twins, they always say that their pregnancy tests are really dark really fast. So like that can't be it. So luckily with all these ultrasound boutiques, I was able to schedule ultrasound for the next day, which was a Saturday. And so I was 17 weeks when we got an ultrasound, which did confirm that there were twins. And so when she was like putting the wand over and I saw like two little heads pop up, and I just like, my heart dropped, not because I didn't want twins, but because everything that I wanted about like a home birth, like I just knew like that's not going to happen now. Like everything that I've wanted is not going to happen. Like I'm going to get a C-section. I know that the complications for twins are worse. Like what if something goes wrong? Like immediately I was just filled with fear of all the things that come with twins. And mind you, like I haven't researched twins at all. I've heard stories of like bad outcomes with twins. And those are the only ones that stick with you.
Right.
So they do the ultrasound. I had di twins. So each twin had its own sac and its own placenta, which is the safest kind of twins to have. So I called my midwife and I'm like, hey, it is twins. Like, what's next? So she's a licensed midwife. So in the state of Oklahoma, they can deliver di twins, but that's it. So she told me that she has only delivered twins by like as the lead midwife once herself. She's attended several as backup midwives and secondary midwives, but she personally has only done the prenatal care for one. And also in the state of Oklahoma, it requires twins to have 3 midwives show up, not one.
Wow.
So that was different as well. So she said, do my research. And then she recommended I go to a provider at a hospital here who does twins and triplets all the time, super natural minded. Most of his patients give birth naturally. And so, but they're out of network with my insurance. So the first week of finding out it was twins was like reading up on the things that are different and trying to get my insurance to let us go to this other hospital. So since my husband is a nurse and he works for this hospital chain in Oklahoma, they only cover their hospitals. Like you can't go outside of them. So after a lot of effort, we realized that that option of going to that hospital and their beautiful birth center that is in the hospital is not an option. So I was like, okay, well, that's too bad. And so the next is we have to figure out like, okay, are we going to try this at home? Because we've never had a home birth and this is twins. Like that sounds crazy. Or are we going to go to the hospital? And so we asked around at the hospital, and the way that they do it, if you are at their bigger hospital, which has the NICU, you can deliver naturally, but they require an epidural and they require you to be in the OR.
Ugh.
And I was like, I really don't like this word require. Like, I don't like it.
Mm-mm.
And so at that time, my husband was working for the safety team of this hospital chain. And part of his job is he has certain facilities he goes and rounds at and collects safety information. And so there's a women's center that they have that just delivers babies. And so he was asking them like, hey, have you guys done twins naturally? And they're like, yeah, we've had 2 natural twins and both of them have needed cooling for bad outcomes. And they've had to be transferred to a different hospital that has the high level NICU. And I was like, well, that's not encouraging. Like if you got 100% like poor outcome of natural twins, like I'm definitely not going there. And so we're thinking like, well, maybe the safest option is to just schedule a C-section and just stop stressing about it. And I just couldn't say yes to that. Like I knew what it was going to be like. And like I delivered in this hospital and it was natural and it was uncomplicated and it still wasn't a peaceful environment. And I still felt like every decision was an explanation, like, oh, why I want delayed cord clamping, or no, don't cut the cord yet. Like, I know you want to cut it, but I would like to wait still. And then like they do PIT just for everybody after you have your baby. I'm like, I don't want that. And they're just like, why not? I'm like, I don't want to explain it. Like, I've already made my decision.
Right.
And so I knew that if I scheduled a C-section, that you're not going to get the golden hour. Like
Right.
the nursing, the part of the golden hour that helps set up your nursing, like that's going to be affected. Like these can have some long-term repercussions if I just decide to do it because that's the most convenient route for everybody. And so I spent a lot of time praying about it. And there's a lot of anxiety. And my husband was very against it. And I'm like, babe, I don't know why. I just feel like we need to have a home birth. Like that's just where I feel peace. Like that's the decision that gives me peace. And so he said that he would support that decision. And so we resumed care with our midwife. And she was recertifying her midwife stuff. So all of her hours she did on twin reeducation. She's like, I will be very up to date on everything for you. And the other thing that was kind of obnoxious was my due date was January 10th. So twins oftentimes you don't get to term. And so the call window was right in the week of Christmas. So no other midwife in the area, because I needed 2 more midwives now.
Wanted to back her up.
No other midwife in the area would take me as a client. And so the only ones that she could agree to take me on were in Tulsa, which is about 2 hours north of Oklahoma City. So like I never got to meet those second midwives, and they were just kind of like, when they get the call, they'll come and try and get here for the birth. And so you also had to pay them separately. So this went from like 1 midwife to 3 midwives. So when we talking about like the financial side of this decision, it got really expensive really fast.
Yeah.
But the Lord provided. And so that's what we decided to do. So my pregnancy with twins, it was mostly uncomplicated, but it was challenging. So at like 25 weeks, I was bigger than I was at term with my other 2 kids. And so it's hard on your body. Like the amount of food that you have to eat to sustain growing twins is insane. My midwife was very protein based. Like she's like, you got to eat your protein. She's like, minimum 100 grams. And I reminded her, I'm like, well, I go to the gym. Like I'm already doing 100 grams a day. She's like, okay, 150. Like you need a lot of protein. So the first trimester, I stopped working out, but the second and third trimester, I was going consistently every week. And like my life turned into like, I get up, I go to the gym, I do my exercises, and then I go home and I eat a lot of protein and I take a nap. Like I had to cut out like my social calendar a little bit because like my new job was just surviving twins.
Surviving a twin pregnancy. Yeah.
And like the nausea never went away. Like it got a little better at the end of the second trimester, but then like mid-third trimester, it got worse again for some reason. So that was a bummer. And I ended up having to see a pelvic floor therapist because there was just like a lot of heaviness that was kind of unbearable. And I thought that my organs were just going to like fall out. And so she worked with me and was able to help me adjust my gym routine. And that ended up being my saving grace because like on days that I couldn't go exercise, I had more energy, but I was in so much more pain because like with the relaxant in your hips, like everything's just so stretchy and it's hard to walk. It's hard to sit. You can't sleep. And so I was extremely motivated to stay consistent working out because then I could actually walk the next day, which was great. That's pretty much the only different thing for my other pregnancies was just how challenging the energy and diet was.
Yeah.
But
now I have a quick question.
Mhm.
So the cholestasis with your first, I've been curious since you told that story if you ever got your numbers back. Like since the test took 4 or 5 days, did you ever
I
get,
did. Yeah, it was actually just below the threshold of diagnosis.
was
So
it like a
it
9?
was, I want to say it was 1 point under the cutoff. And I don't remember what the cutoff is, but it was very close. So it was still elevated. And my OB said that the itching alone is enough cause to diagnose. She doesn't need the bile acid levels to diagnose. But if you look at what like ACOG says, it does have a threshold. So I guess it depends on who you ask.
I've just been looking
So
into it a lot lately, and I've been hearing multiple
really,
stories, and I've had a client with it recently, and so I've been like deep diving into it, and like now I want to know like everyone's like numbers and all the different things. And so you didn't get it with your second, but now that you were
Mhm.
having twins the third time around, and had to eat that much more, so I was wondering like if when you said like your nausea returned, and nausea can sometimes be a symptom of cholestasis too. So I didn't know if like the
Mhm.
cholestasis came back or not for the third.
It did not. Cholestasis would have risked me out of midwifery care, so we were trying really hard not to. So she had me on dandelion root and milk thistle. I swear, every month when she came for a prenatal, she left instructions for a new supplement. So by the
Mhm.
end of the pregnancy, I had like this gigantic stack of supplements on my dresser, which is also a chore to take twice a day. Um, and we never did bile acid levels because that's a more expensive test. So we were going to wait if I became symptomatic. And I think I mentioned this, like the anxiety with this pregnancy was a lot worse. And cholestasis was one of those things that every time my hand or foot itched, I'm just like, I've got it. Like it's over. Like we've tried and failed. And so, yeah, that was a challenge. And one other thing about this pregnancy that was, I guess, obnoxious was we decided against the weekly ultrasounds. So usually with twins in your second trimester, you do ultrasounds and non-stress tests every, I think it's monthly and then biweekly. And then by your third trimester, you're getting ultrasounds and NSTs weekly. And then like the last, if you make it closer, like you're doing it like twice a week. And so I had already decided when I thought it was just one, like the only test or the only ultrasound we're doing is the anatomy scan. Like I just want to make sure that everything's okay for that and there's nothing that we need to prepare for. And that's it. Like I want to trust my body knows what it's doing and that's it. And so now that we have twins, like we discussed, okay, are we going to do all of those tests or ultrasounds, or do we want to avoid them? And the state of Oklahoma requires an MFM consult with twins if you're going to stay under a midwife. So we had one appointment with an MFM, and we ended up doing our anatomy scan with them. And so my midwife called me. She's like, I've scheduled it for you, just so you know, like they're going to convince you that a home birth is a bad idea. They're going to tell you a lot of scary things. The ultrasound's going to be like 2 hours long, and like that's what they do. Like they deal with complications and the unusual sides of pregnancy. So that's their perspective. So just take everything they say with a grain of salt. Like, don't freak out. If you want, I can come with you to the appointment. And I was like, no, my husband's going to come. Like, we should be okay. And so when we went to the appointment, the scan was not very long. It was like 45 minutes. And then they told me that the doctor would come in and like basically repeat the scan and sit and talk to you for an hour about all the things that could go wrong. And they must have been very busy that day because it took him forever to come in. And when he came in, he had a piece of paper and it was like a script he was reading. Like he was like almost slurring his words. He was speaking so fast. And he's like, "Wait, who's your doctor?" And I was like, "We have a midwife. We're going to try for a home birth." And he just looked at me. He's like, "Well, clearly we don't think that's a good idea. Do you have any questions?" And I was like, "Nope." And he's like, "Okay, have a nice day," and left. And like that was it. So I was like, okay, that's unusual. I'm glad that we avoided the 45-minute talk about all the things that could go wrong.
Yeah.
I was not looking forward to that. Anyway, so we did the 20-week ultrasound for the anatomy scan. And then one thing, which this is the annoying part about when you have to like follow the laws of the state, is they require a discordance of less than 20% for twins. So if one twin, there's some formula that figures it out, is bigger than the other twin by so much, then it risks you out.
Of working with a midwife.
Correct. So then I have to transfer to the hospital. So she's like, you can still not have a bunch of ultrasounds, but the more data points you have, the more accurate of a picture you're going to have of reality. So I suggest you have one at 30 weeks and 36 weeks. And so that's what we did. We did a scan at 30 weeks, and I think it was actually 35 weeks. And their discordance was within the normal allowed limit. But because we didn't have a lot of ultrasounds, I never knew where the babies were in my stomach. So there's just one, like, I feel like it's pretty easy to figure out, like, oh, that's a head, that's a butt, that's a leg. But with two of them, I couldn't figure that out. Like, I don't know if this is two heads or is it a head and a butt? Like, I don't know. And my twin A was very, very quiet. And my twin B was very, very wiggly. And so, like I said, my anxiety was really bad. And a lot of days I would feel like she never moved once. And my twin B, that he was moving all the time.
Oh, so it was a boy and a girl?
And it was a boy and a girl. Surprise.
That's probably why your gender results were inconclusive. Okay.
Yes, exactly. And so the first thing that I had to learn in this pregnancy is with my anxiety of just like, you got to give that to God. Like, you can stress about it all you want, but at the end of the day, like, that's all you're doing is stressing about it. And that's not helpful. And nothing is gained from that. And so you have those moments with like a normal pregnancy of like, oh, I haven't felt a move. And like, you get nervous and then you feel a move and you're like, okay, we're fine. But with this, like, one baby was moving and then I was convinced that the other one wasn't moving. And so even when I felt movement, I'm like, well, what if it wasn't her? What if I haven't felt her move in days? Like, what if she's dead? Like, and I've done nothing because I've made these decisions about like not having ultrasounds every week, twice a week. And my husband would just pray with me. And I swear, every time I would call him and just tears, like sobbing, like, I think something's wrong. Like, I haven't felt her move. I can't remember the last time I felt her move. And every time he prayed, and then I would feel like, because I knew one was on top and one was on bottom. So like, some moves you definitely knew were one versus like if the movements were in the middle, like you weren't sure who it was. But when it was really low, I knew it was the girl. And every time you prayed with me, like, I would feel something that's like, oh no, she's definitely alive. Like, it was just like this immediate confirmation of like, it's okay. Like, you've made the right decision. And then like, I would feel peace again. So that's when I started listening to your podcast. Is like, I was like, I've got to hear some birth stories. Like, I need to hear some home birth stories. And so I just binged this podcast for months. And it was such a tool for the Lord, because I would be driving like 30 minutes away. And so I would listen to something. And regardless of what the story was, like, you have a variety of stories, like some hospital births, like some inductions, some C-sections, like you have a variety. And even when it was a story that was completely unrelated to like a natural home birth, the speakers would always say something that would just like, that's exactly what I needed to hear today. And it was honestly shocking, like, how often that happened. And a funny side note, so when I was driving, I would listen to it. And my 5-year-old, he's 4 at the time, he kind of does something in the car. So I didn't really think he was paying attention. And one day he was like, are you going to listen to that show about Jesus and babies? And I was like, yeah, we're going to listen to that. I was like, do you like that show? He's like, yeah, I like it.
Oh, that's really sweet.
Like, oh, that's cute.
The show about Jesus and babies. Yep. I like that.
It's accurate. Anyway, so that was probably, outside of just like the physical aspect of twins, the emotional aspect of the things that come with twins, was the most challenging thing to overcome. And you would have these brief moments of like, am I making the right decision by staying home? And even when you try and look for encouraging things on the internet, you always swipe and see something negative or hear a bad story. And I just kept praying. I'm like, Lord, like, there are so many ways that I can risk out of midwifery care. If my blood pressure gets too high, like, there is like a 2-page list of all the things that will risk me out with the state. And my midwife she's very much this is what the regulations say, and this is what we will follow. And at first I was kind of irritated, because I know that some midwives can stay in the law, but like, not fudge numbers, but also just kind of like be realistic about some things, if that makes sense. And she was very much like, this is the line and we will not cross it. But I think in the end, it gave me a lot of peace because I'm like, Lord, if you do not want me to have these babies at home, like risk me out. Like, please just take that decision away from me. And so one of the cutoffs was I had to hit 37 weeks. And if anything happened before 37 weeks, then I would have to go to the hospital. And so when the week of like week 36, it's like, oh, the deadline is so close. And there was like, oh, am I going to make it? And then 37 weeks came and went and no babies. And so I was like, all right, like maybe like I wanted to have a positive expectation. Like I don't want to just kind of jinx myself into assuming all these bad things are going to happen and then you make them happen.
Yeah.
So I was trying to have a positive outlook, but I was also trying to like be prepared if what I wanted didn't happen. If I did get risked out, if I did end up with a C-section, one of the things that we talked about is if I do end up at the hospital, whether it happens early or, at term, like, are we still going to try for a natural birth or are we just going to let them do a C-section? Because if you can just have a C-section, like it might be easier to control things than if you are trying for a natural birth and they're like, okay, well, you have to get an epidural. It's like, well, no, well, why not? Well, let me tell you all the reasons why. And like, we didn't want to fight those battles with one baby when it was uncomplicated. And if you add twins to that, like everyone freaks out with twins because, especially natural twins, because nobody has natural babies when there's more than one anymore. And so we knew that we were going to be extremely open to a C-section if that happened. So I'm trying to, in the back of my head, like prepare myself for, okay, if that happens, like I'm not going to let it destroy everything. I'm not going to let it destroy my mindset. I'm not going to like be really sad about that. I'm just going to move on. And you also have to start thinking about NICU stays. So a lot of twins, because they come early, they go into the NICU. And I think just because the word twin is introduced, the threshold for going to the NICU is a lot lower.
Right.
So I knew that was going to be a possibility. And so again, like I'm trying to update and educate myself on all the NICU things but also not read about it too much because it's stressful hearing all of the stories of the NICU jail that people get stuck in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I keep sitting down with my husband. I'm like, all right, today I learned this. So like, if this happens, like you have to tell them this. And he's a nurse. He works for this hospital. Like he understands policies and protocols and why they're there. And he's more of the mindset of just play the game so you can leave. And while I understand that mindset, that was harder for me because I feel like I should be making the decisions and I shouldn't be making decisions that I don't agree with just because it's easier for everyone and may even make this process quicker. And I prayed, I was like, just help us not to have to make those decisions. So we continue on. I make it to 39 weeks. And that was, went through a week of Christmas. We tried to keep our social visits very minimal because I didn't want the babies to come early because I was overdoing it. And I did not want to get sick. And because I knew if we get sick and then we end up in the hospital, that would be worse. So I was trying super hard to keep everyone healthy. The super flu was going around. So we did not do anything Christmas except on Christmas Eve, we did a dinner with my family. That was it. Went to candlelight service, went home. And I don't remember what day of the week that was, but the Sunday that I was 38 weeks, I decided to stay home from church because I had this horrible headache and I just felt terrible. I didn't have a fever, but I just didn't feel well. And it was really hard to drink water. It was really hard to eat. And usually I've been able to force myself like, hey, I'm only, 50 grams of protein in today. Like, let's go get some more. And I just could not stomach it. And I was like, man, I hope I'm not getting sick. Hopefully it's just allergies or something. And so Sunday comes and goes. Monday, I feel like I get the chills a little bit. And I was like, I hope this isn't a fever. And then I checked my temperature and it wasn't a fever. But I was just so tired. And so all of Sunday night and all of Monday night, I could not sleep. And one fun symptom of twin pregnancy is the heartburn is very, very bad because the baby on top's like pushing on my stomach, and like you could just feel it like gurgling up your throat. So it was so bad the last 2 nights that I just could not sleep. So I was reading my birth story earlier, and I think I got like 3 hours of sleep like each night. And I was like, oh, I need to sleep. Like, I'm so tired. And so Tuesday comes, and I was like, Mom, you gotta come over. Like, so my mom came over and she was watching the bigger kids. And I started noticing like I'm contracting like pretty regularly. And I had a lot of Braxton Hicks throughout the whole pregnancy. But they had definitely picked up, but were still irregular. They weren't painful. So I call my midwife. I'm like, hey, they've been on and off today. If I'm laying down, I can time them about every 10 minutes. But like every time I get up and move around, they stop, which I'm pretty sure is like the sign of like, that's not real labor. If like you can get up and move around and things go away, then that's not it. So I told her how I wasn't feeling good and I hadn't been drinking or eating much. And she's like, you're probably just dehydrated. That can make contractions worse. So I want you to go chug a liter of water and then see if that fixes the problem. So I chugged a liter of water and it worked. Like the contractions stopped and I was like, great, I'm going to go take a nap. So it was about lunchtime and I lay down and I'm super restless. And like the whole morning, I was just like, I wanted my husband to be home. Like I couldn't explain to you why, but I was just like, do you have to go to work today? And he's like, yes, I have to go to work today. I was like, can you work from home? He's like, no, I have to have class I have to go to. I have to go in for it. And I was really upset that he wasn't home. Not that he had to go to work. I get that. We were trying to save his PTO because it was the end of the year. So it was kind of limited.
Yeah.
So he's at work. So I try and take a nap and the contractions are fizzled out. And I'm just uncomfortable. Like it's not restful. And I lay there for about an hour without sleeping. And then about 1:15, I feel like a painful pop on my stomach. And I'm like, did my water just break? I'm like, surely not. Now I wait. I'm like, maybe I feel something, but I didn't feel a gush. I was like, okay, that's not my water. It's like, well, I should probably stand up and make sure that's not it. And as soon as I stood up, it just like, oh, yep, that definitely was my water. And so I start crying because I'm like, I'm so tired. Like I didn't want labor to start out with this. Like they say that when your water breaks, like it gets a lot worse, a lot faster. Like that's not how I wanted this to go. And I really wanted to sleep first. I haven't slept in 2 days. I haven't eaten anything. I'm dehydrated. Like this is a horrible way to start labor. And so I call my friend and tell her, and this is the same friend that had used this midwife. So she's had 3 babies at home and she prays with me. She's like, it's going to be okay. Just call your midwife and let me know how it goes. And so I called my midwife and she says, okay. She said, do you mind if I come check you? I just want to get a ballpark if we need to get the midwives from Tulsa coming down. And so I told her she could. And so I'm expecting my contractions to start picking up now that my water broke. And they didn't. They actually stopped completely. And so I'm panicking now because I'm like, oh, we're going to call all these people. We're going to get the people from Tulsa coming. And then I'm not even going to start labor for another day. And so I'm stressing about that. And she comes over. And then as soon as she shows up, my husband is just behind her coming home from work. And it's like my body was just waiting for my husband to get home because as soon as he was home, it was just like a huge contraction that like I couldn't breathe through. And I was like, oh, wait, I think this might be it. So funny, me and my husband talked about this. So with my last 2 pregnancies, or I guess just the last one, I was always in denial that labor starts. And every time he'd be like, oh, like, should we do something? Is this labor? I would tell him, no, it's not it. It's not it. And so this time when I called him and told him my water broke, he's like, so do you want me to come home or are we waiting? Like, are we still in denial? And I yelled at him. I'm like, no, this is it. You must come home now. So he made it home. Good. And so he starts filling the birth pool, which I'm really glad that we had it, but it was a pain to put up. So like while I'm starting labor, I want him with me and he's all trying to do all this stuff. And so that was less than ideal, but I really wanted a birth pool. So I'm still glad we did it, but I do question if I would do that again. So the contractions are picking up and I'm not timing them at all. They're getting very intense. And so I started to panic. I'm like, I've been in labor for 30 minutes and I'm already like, I can't breathe. Like, I'm not coping with this. Why is this so hard? And my midwife, she's like, oh, honey, I could have told you that you were super close. I didn't know you didn't realize that. So I labor for a little bit, and then right at right before 3:30, I guess I start pushing, and I guess I didn't realize that labor was going to be that quick. So my water broke at 1:15, and then I had a good probably 45 minutes where I didn't really have anything. And then by 3:15ish, I was pushing, and so I pushed for 6 minutes.
Were you in the tub?
And I made it to the tub. I was not in the tub very long, but I did make it to the tub. And I was pushing, and when I was pushing with my last one, like I felt the ring of fire, but it was not unbearable. Like you just kind of slow your pushing down and breathe through it, and it was okay. And this time, like there was no ring of fire. Like I thought I was going to burst open. And so I remember like putting my hand where her head was and just like pushing back against it. And that was the only thing that provided any relief. And I felt like I was pushing for a really long time, but they told me I only pushed for 6 minutes. And like you can feel like the head bulging out before it comes out. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll feel her head. And I did not feel her head. And I was convinced like something was wrong because the pressure is so bad, and I'm not feeling the top of her head. And so I had my midwife check me, and she's like, no, everything's just where it's supposed to be. And so once I got, I guess, the confirmation that nothing is amiss, my body must have relaxed, and she came out. And so she started crying very quickly, but her cord was very short. And so I probably held her right to where my belly button was, as high as I could get her. And I probably have 3 minutes before the contractions started again. And so I hold her through one contraction, and I realized that I need counter pressure again. So when I was having labor at the beginning, my husband was having to push really hard on my back. And now that I'm holding her, he can't do that. And so I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm going to drop her. Someone needs to take her. So we have this picture of my husband. He's just kind of like holding her up above the water because she's like barely long enough to get her above the water. And so we do cut the cord fairly quickly, but the cord had stopped pulsing and was white. So I was okay with it. And then so we give her to my mom, and the second and third midwives have not arrived yet. So it's just my midwife and her assistant right now. And so I start pushing for baby number 2. And I don't have the urge to push again, but my midwife, she's just like, you need to push. And I didn't really understand why in the moment, but I guess that's the benefit of having a midwife that is like, you don't need to know why she's telling you to do something. Like you built that trust over all these appointments. So I just was doing it. And later she was telling me that his heart rate was starting to drop. And so I pushed in total for 17 minutes. And I'm not sure the timeline between both of them. So I'm not sure the timeline of all of the heart rates and stuff, but she just kept telling me to push, and I didn't have the urge. I'm like, I can't, like, I can't go. Like, I don't have to push. And she's like, you got to push anyways. And then so she checked me, and she's like, I can feel his water bag. Do you mind if I break it? And I said that was fine. And so she was trying to break it with her fingers, and she couldn't. And so then I tried to like scratch it to pop, and I couldn't. It was like a very thick bag. And so at one point she's like, all right, you're going to have to get out of the tub. And I could hear that she was starting to get a little panicky. So I was kind of worried, but at the same time, it happened so fast, I couldn't process it that well. So I get out of the tub and I kneel on my bed. And I guess once you shift gravity and I was kneeling, my water broke and he just fell out. Like I did not push him out. Like he was super high up before my water broke because the water bag was kind of like keeping him stuck. And as soon, like, I swear I didn't even push him out. He literally fell out. And baby bees often have a harder transition just because they come out so fast. They don't have as high APGAR scores. And sometimes it just takes them longer to adjust to the world. And so he was super white and he was not breathing for about a minute before he started crying. But through that it was very quick, but I was never worried like, oh, like we've made a mistake. Like we shouldn't have done this. And he does start breathing. And as soon as he started breathing, my placenta fell out. and both of my placentas had fused. And so because it came out so fast, my midwife thinks it probably detached before he was born. And that's why his heart rate was dropping, which come to find out, when she asked me to get out of the tub, his heart rate had dropped to 85. So that's kind of scary to look back on. But at the same time, if that was going to happen, if that would have happened in the hospital, like they would have just rushed me to the OR. Like there wouldn't have been a conversation about it.
Yeah.
And
arguably it would have taken him longer to get out.
Correct. And I do wonder if the outcome would have changed. But he came out, he was fine. He was, I don't remember what it's called, but he was breathing really fast. His oxygen levels were fine. His lungs were clear. They weren't diminished or anything, but he was just like breathing like 80 times a minute. Like even after the first hour, when everything settles down, he's just breathing really fast. And so they ended up giving him some positive pressure at some point, which helped. But for the first day, he was breathing way faster than his sister was. So if I was in the hospital, like that would have been a NICU admission right there. And was it necessary? No, it wasn't. That is a normal thing that can happen. That is not a concern. It's just be aware of that. So that happened. And then let's see, after he was born, after baby B was born, I started bleeding a lot. So she ended up having to give me 2 rounds of Pitocin and Cytotec to get the bleeding to stop. And she says that she estimated about 750 mLs of blood loss, which I think is below the threshold of postpartum hemorrhage. But in the hospital, like, would that have been different? I don't know.
Right.
So
you would never know. It's hard. Some people think it's 500 ml. Some people think it's 1,000. So it's subjective.
Yeah. So everyone came out. Everyone was fine. The only thing that was different was, I guess, just the quickness of the whole birth just kind of like put me into this shock of like, I don't know what's happening. Like after my babies are born, like you get like this wash of emotion and hormone over you. And when the first one came out, like I got that. But after the second one came out, I just remember just like being shocked, like big eyes, like, oh my gosh, that just happened. And I don't remember that like emotion of like, oh, he's here, my beautiful baby. It was just, what just happened? I don't know. And my coordination and ability to think just went away. So after he came out, they're like, all right, lay on your bed and we'll hand him to you. And just the movement of like from my knees to laying down, I'm just like, somebody help me. Like, I can't do this. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's because it was such a fast birth or maybe I did lose more blood. I don't know. But that was challenging to process because I felt like I didn't appreciate the whole experience. And it wasn't a blissful experience. It was, from my perspective, a bit chaotic because like you went from your water breaking to, oh, you got to fill the tub to, oh my gosh, like these contractions are on top of each other to, oh my gosh, I'm pushing and this hurts way more than it usually does. Like something's wrong. And so there wasn't a lot of time to process that. And so that was hard afterwards, just to think about like the quickness of it. And I was reading other birth stories and it sounds like it's not an uncommon perspective of quick labors to just kind of be in shock from it.
Yes, a precipitous labor will definitely throw you mentally for sure.
Yes. You have quick labors, do you not?
Well, my last 3 have been like around 3 or 4 hours, which to me wasn't quick because my third was 2 hours from start to finish. And that I have all the same emotions that you're talking about right now is what I had with my second when it happened so fast. And I was like, yeah, like your mind is trying to catch up with what your body just did and you're not totally there and you're like, what just happened? Like, it's like you weren't even a part of the experience. You were just like, it was happening through you, but like you weren't doing anything to make it happen and you couldn't stop it. And I totally get what you're talking about.
Yeah, you felt very out of control, which I know a lot of people that it's just part of birth. But with my second, I didn't feel out of control. Like I felt like everything was okay. And then we're in the next step. And oh, this is transition. Oh, this is the pushing stage. And this time it was not like that. So they had arrived, and the midwife stayed for a few hours to make sure his breathing was okay and make sure my bleeding had slowed down. And then everyone went home, and it's like 9 p.m. And I'm just like, oh man, we got out before the end of the day. And I'm such a people pleaser. I was really satisfied. I'm like, yes, like I didn't get them on Christmas. I didn't get them on New Year's. It was like I called them in the afternoon and we finished by evening. And for whatever reason, like that just made me very happy that I didn't inconvenience anyone or wake anyone up.
So did the other two midwives ever get there?
They showed up at some point after they were both born.
Yeah.
So
the long
it
drive.
was,
yeah,
it was definitely a couple of times where we could have used the extra hands when after the first baby was out and we were trying to cut her cord. It took longer because my midwife had to mark the cord clamps different colors to make sure that because they fused, she had to know which clamp came from which baby. So she had to like label them. And so it took her a lot longer to just clamp and cut the cord
than it normally would.
And they helped clean everything up. And when baby B was having a little trouble breathing, it was nice to have like two other midwives to listen to him and kind of agree that, yeah, it's unusual, but this is what it is. And it's nothing to be concerned about. And we went to sleep. I didn't sleep again after that very well until for 5 months postpartum.
Right. I'm like, you hadn't slept a couple of previous days, so it's been a hot minute since you've gotten any sleep.
It did, and it did not get better. So this postpartum was definitely the hardest, but not because of the twins, but because when I mentioned that I wasn't feeling well on Sunday, I actually had the flu. So the day after they were born, we were FaceTiming someone in our family to show them the babies. And so I'm talking and I realized like, I cannot catch my breath. Like I can't breathe. Like, why can I not breathe? And so I'm immediately like, oh my gosh, is this an embolism or like, is this a fever? Like, I don't know. And then my husband called my midwife and she says, you probably should go to urgent care and make sure that she doesn't have an infection of some kind. Cause I had spiked a low grade fever. So
like 1 day postpartum.
Yeah. We had just hit the 24-hour mark.
Oh man.
And I had a fever. And so we go to urgent care and I get a positive flu A test. So that was unfortunate. And so I ended up getting like a breathing treatment. They sent me home with an inhaler and I got antibiotics, which I'm like, oh, out of all of this, and I still ended up on antibiotics.
Oh man.
Such a bummer. And so my two older boys, they were here for the birth, but after the birth, they went to my sister's house to spend the night for a few nights and they both got the flu and they were horribly sick. So I felt terrible because like I'm sick and they're sick, but they're not with me. Like they've never been sick without mom. And they just kept asking for me. They're like, where's mom? Where's mom? And so after 2 days, they ended up coming back to our house. And my 3-year-old, he was almost 3, he had a fever for 8 days. And so that was just a really long week of like everyone in the family was really sick. And like we're having to go to like, we had to go to the newborn appointment and the midwives are coming over and then my mom is trying to come over and help. And like, we just needed so much help. So I'm so grateful that my family is close because I don't know how we would have done it with just us, with everyone sick and puking. But that was a really tough transition into twins.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we kind of thought that once the babies are here, it will be easier for our 2-year-old to kind of like, mommy has to take care of the twins. Like now you're daddy's problem, but I can't tell my sick kid, like, no, you can't come near me. Like that was tough.
Yeah.
So after about a week, things everyone got better and we started to figure out the normal with twins. But yeah, it was a good experience. I'm glad I ended up with a home birth. I think if we would have chosen the hospital, I think especially with getting the flu afterwards, that there would have been a lot of different things that happened. I think we probably would have had a NICU stay. I would have had to stay for a really long time if I had the flu, and I had the flu for several days. So I am really grateful that we made the decision we did. And yeah, that's my birth story of twins.
Yeah. Well, thank you, first of all, for coming on and being willing to share that story. I know that you were saying you wanted, more twin moms to be able to hear a variety of twin stories, or like the fact that you can naturally deliver twins even at home. So all of that, I really appreciate now other people having a resource to know like it's possible and people do this and it's okay. And I know like laws are different in different states and people's thresholds for like comfort are different as well, but it's still nice to hear that it wasn't like, oh, I'm having twins, so we went ahead and scheduled our 36-week C-section. And it's like when anyone tells me that, I'm like, oh, we have so much talking to do, though. There could be, it doesn't mean an automatic C-section. But throughout this whole process, for all of your babies, do you feel like the Lord taught you anything specific or something that you in reflection have now seen that he's like revealed to you through any of your labors or specifically, through the twins, any of them?
Yeah, I definitely think that he was teaching me to just surrender everything to him, like the stresses, the anxieties, like he is in control and how I want it to go is not relevant. Like he gives us brains to, learn and inform ourselves, but we have to trust him. And this last pregnancy really changed my prayer relationship with God. And without that, like there's some days that I don't know how I'd get through. Like you're just in tears all day, wondering if your babies are alive. And it was easier to answer some of those questions on my own with one, like when you feel the move, you're like, oh, I don't need to stress about this anymore because I found the solution. And with this time, it was like, I need to trust God with this because I can't feel better myself. And so I would say that was probably the biggest difference this time. And I think just the journey of surrendering to God is something that you just learn in motherhood. And I think the longer you're a mother, the more you learn that lesson. And I definitely learned more of it than I did with my first. So.
Absolutely. It's like you almost wish I could have learned, the lessons that I've now learned in babies, 5 and 6, in my first, and I'm like, oh, how different things may have turned out. Or, like my emotions are just like the roller coaster of the process. But, we're stubborn. Sometimes we're human and we work out of our flesh a lot. But like we were telling our kids the other day, we were talking about Galatians 5 and we were talking about the fruits of the Spirit and what it means to operate out of the Spirit versus the flesh and trying to explain that. And I'm like, yes, but the closer you stick with the Lord and the more often that you read his word and praise him and pray to him and, and are walking in step with him, the easier it will become and the more natural it will become to walk out your life in the Spirit instead of the flesh. So like now for me, having gone through 6 babies, it is much easier for if I were to get pregnant again to just like open my hands and say, all right, Lord, you've got this. You've got a plan rather than trying to micromanage the whole thing. So
you can't do it.
Nope. And it's not worth the stress. It's no fun. No. Well, Kelli, thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your stories. And I truly appreciate you taking the time to do this. And it means a lot to me and the others who are listening.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for your podcast. It was a huge source of encouragement for me. So keep it up.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. You can reach me at Surrendered Birth Services on Instagram or email me at contact@surrenderedbirthservices.com. Be sure not to miss an episode by hitting the follow button. Also, we'd love for you to leave a written review of the show so that more people's births and lives can be changed by the love of Jesus and the empowerment of accurate birth education. If you really enjoyed this episode in particular, please take a screenshot of it and post it to your Instagram story, tagging Surrendered Birth Services. If you would like to be a guest on the Surrendered Birth Stories podcast, please click the link in the episode show notes to fill out your interest form. Also, if you're interested in taking my childbirth classes, birth consultations, or having me as your birth doula, please click on the link in the show notes to take you to my website for online and in-person options. Just as a reminder, this show is not giving medical advice, so please continue to see your personal care provider as needs arise. We hope you have a great week, and remember, learn all that you can, make the best plans, and then leave it in God's hands.